Beautiful day. I woke up, saw the falls, and got energized, and then I walked into the room, and there was so much good energy, people smiling and hugging. And so I am pleased, absolutely pleased to be able to share some of my work with you in the hopes that it inspires some of yours, because at the end of the day, if you're not inspired, then you're probably not going to do a good job. So I try to wake up every morning with a little bit of inspiration, and since I pretty much live my life on a plane, going from place to place and meeting all kinds of people all over the world, I get a lot of inspiration on the internet. But before I even tell you about the internet, I'm going to tell you about that little girl there. That one there. Does she look familiar? Maybe the curls give you an idea who she is. That is me when I was going to school, and I was and am, believe it or not, an incredible introvert. I decided a long time ago that if I couldn't give a presentation in class, which I was asked to do, then I'd probably never be able to do all of the things that I really wanted to do in the world. And so I made a concrete decision that I was going to learn how to do this, but do forgive me if I stumble because I'm not perfect. Nobody is. And that's the best part of it, is that I'm working on it. Every single day, every single moment, I am trying to learn something new. And so I'm curious to see how many people here will actually teach all of us something. I encourage you to do that because at the end of the day, there is no expert here in the room when it comes to social media and education. It is so new. It is a budding field where all of us have that opportunity to take it to the next level. But again, it's not going to be one person that's going to do it. It's going to be the community of educators that see the value in it and start working together. Now, one of the reasons why people think that I'm an expert is, well, probably because I wrote a book, but more importantly, it's life experience. That's the real expertise. So going back to this little girl over here, when I was very young, I went to 19 different schools before the age of 19. And one of the reasons why I decided to overcome my shyness was the fact that every time I went into a new school, I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified. You know what that is, even as educators, the first day that you walk into that school and you don't know anybody and there's this terror that people aren't going to like you. And so there's this sense of needing to take a step back, or at least that was my approach. Okay, fine, it's my first day. How does this school work? How does this culture work? And you notice right away you've got the different kinds of cliques, and even within the teaching community you've got different cliques. And it was always fascinating to me to look at, people that were athletes versus the intellectuals versus the artists. You had all kinds of different groups, the brainiacs and so on. And I never really felt that I fit into one in particular, again, because I knew that the next semester I'd be going to a new school. But it was an amazing opportunity to observe how each of these different groups communicated in very different ways, but at the end of the day, they were all saying the same thing. And it's a basic human tenet. We all want to be loved. We all want to be part of a group. We all want to feel like we're part of the collective while maintaining our individuality. And as I was kind of realizing that, one teacher came to me and he saw me at the back of the class. His name is Chandra Prakash, and I will never, ever forget him because he changed my life. He rocked my world because he saw me. He saw me. I was hiding way back there, and I'm dark. I'm good at shadowing. No problem. He spotted me, and he asked me after class one day what I was passionate about. He didn't ask me about my schoolwork. He didn't ask me about what teachers normally would ask me about, why I was always late, how come I didn't go to school, how come I'm the new kid on the block, why do I move so much? No. He asked me what kind of music I liked. He was able to tap into something that we both shared in common. Turns out he loved music too, and he introduced me to the New Musical Express and all kinds of great music that I had never heard of, like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. I know I was a little slow, but Chandra Prakash allowed me to discover that I could actually connect to people, that I was not an outsider, that I actually had a voice, and that people actually wanted to hear what I had to say. And when I think about social media, those same tenets remain, right? If you look at the different social networks, each one of them has a different voice, a different tone, a different audience. It's like those athletes and the goths and the intellectuals and the artists. They're all there. It's a hodgepodge. but they all communicate a little bit differently. The way that you speak on Facebook is going to be very different from the way that you speak on Twitter, and very different from the way that you speak on LinkedIn. But they're all social networks. They're all groups of people. They're all part of your community. And so it's about stepping back and listening first to see how things work before you dive in. Now, my first taste of social networking was not online. It was through a community called TED, the TED Conference, Technology, Entertainment, Design, and it featured some of the luminaries of our time, Nobel Prize-winning economists and philosophers and artists. People like Quincy Jones would show up there, Steven Spielberg, and I was like a teenager. I'm like, wow, this is so great. How come I'm so lucky to be here? I really couldn't understand it, A, because I was the only kid there, B, because I was the only black person there, and 3, it was mostly 50 and 60-year-old Caucasian men. But my teacher, Prakash, had recommended me to go and program computers at Concordia University in Montreal, and I ended up working on these amphibious cars and thinking about the future, and all of a sudden I was thrown onto the internet, and I started doing a little bit of research and connecting with universities all over the world, and somehow the TED community found me and asked me to come down and asked me to give them a hand. So I was just pleased as punch on that one, but I just thought, why is it that I'm so lucky? It's not because I'm more special. It's because I must have a purpose here. Yes, a purpose. What a concept for a 17-year-old. So again, I decided I was going to observe. What are some of the lessons that I could learn from this community of luminaries? What was the commonality between a Steven Spielberg and a Nobel Peace Prize winner? What could that commonality be? Well, what I observed is that all of these people knew how to use something called social capital. And social capital is a really, really simple concept. It's in economics, it's in sociology. The way that I'm using it here and the way that I use it in my book is pretty straightforward. Your social capital, to start with, are the people that love you, the people that respect you, they're your peers, they're the people around you, the people that support you on a day-to-day basis. And when things are good, they will celebrate you. And when things are bad, they will support you. They're there for you. And the more that you appreciate these people, that you want to add to their lives because they add so much to yours, even when they tell you that you're not doing something right, they tell you because they care about you, well, that kind of love has to be returned. It's a two-way street, because if you don't give back, it's not going to come back to you. And so if you can start creating that circle, which you obviously do as educators on an ongoing basis, with your family, with your friends, with the kids in your schools, the boards, the parents, the communities, right? This is what you do as educators. You keep adding value to those around you. You're building your social capital. And when you start doing that to the extent where it's not just the people that know you, but people that you've never even met before, start talking about you, about your work, about your ideas, about all of these great things that you're doing, and you have no idea, but you're really happy that they're talking about it. That's when you've moved from social capital to cultural capital, because you're starting to affect the culture around you. And this is the opportunity that you have today to not only maximize your social capital, but on top of it, to build on your cultural capital and amplify that through digital technology. This is a snapshot of the internet. Snapshot, right? There are constantly billions and billions and billions of connections, people online. They're sending tweets, they're sending emails, they're looking at videos, they're searching for things. All of these things are represented by these dots. All of these bits of light are us trying to connect to each other as human beings. And if you want to look at it from a really basic perspective, all of us have had the opportunity to say hello this morning to somebody in the room and smile and really feel like, hey, I'm glad I came today. I'm glad I woke up. This is fantastic. This is going to be useful. Well, imagine if you and that other person sat down together and you decided that you were going to do something great, like co-create the future of education. What a concept. I know it seems big, but that's really what you're being asked to do. This is what this is about. because we're at that cutting edge. It's very, very nascent field in which we have no real idea of where it's going to go. So we get to work together to make that happen. Now back to our two people who are meeting this morning over coffee in the back there, and they realize they might have never met before, but they've probably got about 25 people in common. And if you look at their smartphones, all the contacts in there, you realize they really do have at least 25 people in common. And looking at your peers, you know that's true. So if you start thinking about it from a mathematical perspective, really straightforward, 2 people to the power of 25, which is not 2 times 25, which would only be 50, 2 to the power of 25 is over 33 million, and that's the concept. It's called Reed's Law, and it's really, really basic. It's network theory, where at the end of the day, these 2 people that have just met, that have 25 people in common and have a common goal, they're passionate about that goal, they've already added to their communities, they've got that social capital, their names, their schools are starting to get out there and hit the culture. Well, all of those 25 people want to help you with your process because they believe in you, they believe in your idea. That's 33 million opportunities to build that idea together. 33 million people out of the 2 that met this morning over coffee. That's a powerful concept. And if you look around you, there are a heck of a lot more than 2 people here. So any math whizzes over here, try to give me the permutation of what that could mean for you if you all decided that you were going to work on an idea together. The opportunities are endless. You could literally revolutionize the state of education. But for those of you who still aren't convinced about the idea of social media, I get it. It's fairly new. So let's go back really, really quickly. If we look at the timelines in terms of communication, pretty simple. 16th century, we had theater, and then we had the printing press, and then we had the motion picture camera. Move forward to the novel. It only took 150 years from the printing press to the novel. Then the MP3 camera to movies, 35 years, television to sitcom, and finally, we moved to the present, or fairly present. The average television viewer is 50 years old. I personally, and I produce and create TV shows. I'll tell you a secret, I don't watch TV. I haven't owned a TV in 10 years. I don't even own a landline telephone. I have one thing beyond my laptop, which is a smartphone. And that connects me to everything and everyone that I care about. But that's new. And the only reason, in fact, that I've been doing that for 10 years is because I grew up in Canada, right? I grew up with Research in Motion BlackBerry. The idea that I was able to have a BlackBerry at the very beginnings of BlackBerry is incredible, and it's an opportunity that we as Canadians can really celebrate. We have been the front runners for a very, very long time in terms of this connected society, and now we have the opportunity to build on that, beyond the companies that are involved, to focus on the human beings. We are at the center of that technology. It's not the technology that runs us. Technology isn't good or bad. It's what we choose to do with it. Now, when I was doing some research for my book, I realized that a lot of the tenets that we find in studies that are done by Harvard about leadership are the very same tenets that you'll find when you're thinking about social media, right? So if you want to be a good leader these days and moving forward, well, it's pretty simple. You want to be able to demonstrate vision, right? Influence, positive influence, hopefully, empathy, attunement, a desire to help others and empower them, right? That's an educator as far as I'm concerned. That's exactly what you do every day, and there's no reason why you can't do that, both face-to-face as well as online. There is no real divide there except the ones that we have in our mind because, again, that technology has accelerated so quickly that it's kind of hard for us to be able to wrap our heads around, but it's exactly the same thing as what we do on a daily basis, and yet 2% of educators in the world are using social media for schools, and yet we spend millions and millions and millions of dollars on technology inside of schools to try to be at the cutting edge and share things, you know, with our students when they're at home and so on and so forth, especially when you start getting to the university level. And then you look at the kids and but they're all over Facebook and they're all over Twitter and a number of other social networks like YouTube. Why are we not using the technology that they're already familiar with to start building that opportunity? Why? Because there are a lot of issues around it. first of all, and we will talk about that in a moment. But first, let's look at how corporate is using it. And the reason I'm saying this is because they're all about the bottom line. They're all about the dollar. If it doesn't work, they're not going to do it, right? That's how corporations work, and you might agree or you might disagree, but it's interesting if you start looking at how they're using it. From there, we can start extrapolating how potentially, as educators, you might be able to use it. So some of the top brands in the world, the top 100, and these are listed not based on how big the brand is, but rather how they were able to translate their social engagement, so how they use social media, and how they translated that into a dollar value, a return on investment, a ROI. And so if you look at Starbucks and Dell and eBay and all of those companies, including BlackBerry, a great Canadian company, once again, who's at number 12 here, the reason why they're tops is because these are the companies that use the most channels of distribution. Here, channels of distribution, pretty straightforward. We're talking about social networks. Did you even know that there were 11 social networks? In fact, there are thousands and thousands of them. But we seem to go back to the same ones because we only have so much time and energy, right, to be able to start exploring this stuff. And in many cases, we discover it through our kids, whether it's our own kids or our students. But we're discovering this stuff as we go along. The most important part, again, is to listen. Where are your people? Where is your community? And you'll see that depending on which part of the community, they're going to be invested in different social networks. Now again, let's see how all of this investment in social networks actually turned into an investment in dollars. Well, if you look again, now this is kind of a snapshot of 2008, and if you remember 2008, 2009, it was challenging, incredibly challenging economically. It still is, but this is where everything crashed. And yet, when you look at the companies that, again, engaged on an ongoing basis with social media, not just, oh, let's throw a campaign out there. Every single thing that was happening within these organizations got sent out via social networking sites, and these are the companies, right, the mavens, that actually had a positive return on investment at the end of the year despite the economic downturn. It had everything to do with their relationships with their community. They empowered their community to have a voice, and as a result, that community stayed true to them and kept buying their products and services. So now, fast forward to education. How does this apply? Well, again, if you look at how students are using social networking in terms of education, you'll see already 96% of students are using Facebook, right? You've got lots on YouTube, a lot less on blogs. And that's because you got to do a lot of reading on blogs, and students, unless they're really inspired, don't necessarily want to do a lot of reading. At the same time, if you look at this survey that was done by Babson, 63% of educators say that they have a Facebook account. Is that true? A Facebook account. All right. Does that look like 63%? Roughly, right? That makes sense. So 63% of you roughly have a Facebook account. That's fantastic. Now, how many of you are actually using that Facebook account or another Facebook account to educate? 1? 2? That's not bad. I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but that is not bad. There's so many times I've asked this question where nobody has lifted their hands up because they can't seem to make the connection. Now, the 2 people that raised their hand, can you stand up, please? Please, pretty please. Come on, don't be shy. I'm standing here alone. Come on. There you go. Okay, so the 2 ladies over here, please come to the mic. We've got 1 mic there and we've got 1 mic there. Come on down. Give them a round of applause. Come on. It's not easy to do first thing in the morning. We want to give them some love. It takes a lot of courage. But the point is they do have courage. They are the only 2 people in this room that are actually using these tools to educate, and I want to know how. So we're going to start with you, ma'am, if you don't mind. Identify yourself. Tell us, how are you using Facebook as an educator?
I'm a new VP, and before this year I was a head of a performing arts department, and this was a way to communicate with my art students about upcoming performances and all the information they needed in a busy performance program.
That's fantastic. Now, what was the result? Was it positive or negative?
Oh, extremely. It saved a lot of time. I'm not there anymore. They're still using it. There's a music council there that it's like a student council just for the music program. That's how they stay in touch with each other, post minutes, and share information.
That is amazing, amazing. Stay right there. Thank you very much. And ma'am, how are you using Facebook as an educator?
Well, my name is Sue Pfeffer. I'm a superintendent. I don't use it as an educator in my job, but I use it to educate a lot of friends and I guess colleagues that I've sort of collected along the way, social justice issues, issues of poverty in our board. I think there's a lot of misinformation and people who have lots of maybe conflicting ideas about education and what we're doing, and I try to spread the word of what we're doing in the TDSB especially.
That is fantastic. We have to open up these dialogues. There will always be conflicting ideas, but unless we can have an open discourse, we're not going to get anywhere. Congratulations to both of you. These are the real experts in the room. Thank you, ladies. Good job. Nice. So again, I'm not an educator. I'm not a teacher. I'm not a superintendent. I've never run a school. I mean, I barely went to school when I went to school because I kept being bullied and then I kept being transferred to another school. So there you go. These are the experts. That's you. So please, when I go, like I'm going to be leaving after this conference, but you have the opportunity to stay connected to each other and to start that conversation and build on it, see what you might potentially do together. I love the concept that you're a community that cares or else you wouldn't show up. Well, guess what? Students care too. If you look at this stat, 59% of students use social networking specifically to talk about education-related topics and specifically about their schoolwork. Now, if they're online using these tools to talk about education in their homework, where are the teachers? Where are the teachers having that conversation with them? Because it's not just about sharing photos of what you did last night. A lot of kids are really getting the notion that there's a lot more to be done there, but they need some guidance. They need some ground rules. They need a way to do it that works for them and that works for you, which is why there's an amazing opportunity to really co-create this together. Now, I know that some of you use Twitter because I saw a few tweets, and Simon told me that he set up a Twitter account. Now, first and foremost, how many people here are using Twitter? Oh, that's great. That's fantastic. Okay, so we've got about 10, 15 people, and I'm sorry, my eyesight it really is not that great. However, I wanted to know, and Simon backed me up here, because Simon is the one who's actually doing the tweets for TSAA. And so I wanted to know how many of the people that are on Twitter are actually following TSAA right now. Hello? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Now, I challenge those of you who do know how to use Twitter to send a tweet. Send a tweet to Simon. Simon's all set up. He's got his smartphone right there. He's standing by. We want you to send a tweet about your thoughts on the future of education or social networking or whatever it is that really resonates with you, right? And then we're going to practice and see how we can start integrating that in this whole process of having this open conversation. That it's not just about us in the room, it's also about people on Twitter that are following each of you that aren't here, that get a chance now to participate and see what you're thinking, see what's going on, seeing what's interesting. So this is an extended list of things that you might be able to do with Twitter. But again, for those of you who aren't yet familiar with the power of Twitter, the people that are on Twitter in this room right now, they are your experts. Forget about these lists. If you don't know what Twitter is and you're really not sure what to do with it, go see the people in this room who get it. It'll be a shortcut, it'll help you, and it might even inspire you. And I'm always one who is saying yes to inspiration. I love being inspired, especially when it's about other human beings who are trying to empower youth, because that's really what we're doing. We're empowering the next generation, and we're empowering ourselves at them. So again, a lot of educators kind of look to these types of graphics, if you will, where they want to be able to see percentages and who's doing what and where and how are they doing it. So for those of you who are very linear minded, this is some of the information there, and we'll make sure that the talk and the presentation itself is available to you so that you can, go through it at your leisure and maybe see if any of this stuff applies to you and how it might potentially expand based on who your community is and who your schools are. But the most important thing is to remember that whether you engage in this way or not, 43% of web news sharing is done via social media. So we know that corporate is doing it. And corporate is doing it because they're going to make money, but they're going to make money because everyone is already using these social networks, including when it comes to news and information. Now that's a powerful thought, because not too long ago, if you wanted to look to news, you were looking at the CBC, right? You were looking at the credible news sources, the print newspaper. All of that's going out the window, whether we like it or not. 43% of web news sharing is happening via social media. Most folks in the world right now are getting their news from other people, not from the so-called trusted sources that we've always thought about as reliable. And it's not surprising. I mean, think of Rupert Murdoch and all the stuff that we've seen coming out of that, and what happened with Conrad Black and what's been going on with the New York Times. I mean, we're questioning all of our institutions. So there is a new pathway. There are new conversations that are taking place, and we're asking you, as we're asking corporate, as we're asking institutions, what is the center of your universe? What is the purpose of what you're doing? In your case, it should be pretty darn clear, right? But in many cases, people are still trying to figure out how best to serve their communities. Well, one of the incentives that I found was an amazing study that was done by UCLA BoardX, and it really got me thinking, because it makes so much sense, and yet I wasn't able to extrapolate it until I actually saw the study. It's called, I call it the Center of the Universe study. They just called it the Connected study. And the idea is that they looked at 6,000 different companies all over the world, right? And they looked at the 6,000 most connected companies, i.e. the ones that were, again, the top brands, but looking at it not from a social media perspective, but rather who the heck are they, who are they hiring? Who are they employing? Why are they the top brands in the world? And part of it was that all of their employees were connected. So their jobs didn't necessarily have anything to do with social media, but all of the employees were using social media. And they were using social media on a personal level, but they were also using social media for work. They were getting insights into their industry. They were trying to figure out, what the next market trend was going to be, and they were sharing it when they got back to work and including it in emails and memos and even presentations to the board. And so it suddenly clicked in my head, but of course that makes sense. The more connected you are, the more information you get more readily and fast, the faster you can make the decisions, giving you a competitive edge, right? The more information you have, the faster you have it, the quicker you can make a decision, the more likely you are to have a competitive edge. Now, when we think about that in terms of education, that means that if you are in a school where kids feel like they can connect to the students, and that they can connect to the teachers, and potentially even connect to other resources around them that have to do with their homework, all in a place that's really familiar, they're more likely to do schoolwork when they get home, and they're more likely to be talking about the themes that are brought up in schoolwork when they're just hanging out over the weekend, when they're doing their own stuff, because it all becomes integrated into that thought process. There is no disconnection for most of us that use these tools on an ongoing basis, whether I'm having a conversation with you or you're sending me a tweet. To me, it's all part of the same medium. It's people talking to me, and I get to talk back and learn stuff. So you have to remember, again, that for most of us, we're still at a nascent stage trying to find meaning in our digital lives. And again, we need leadership. You get to help us add value to the community by helping us start to create guidelines for students and educators and the educational system as a whole as to how to do that well. Right? I'm not talking about diving in blindfolded and not knowing what you're doing and then getting burned, because a lot of schools have done that. And that's not at all what I'm encouraging. As I said to you in the beginning, my real experience is life experience. And that started with those 19 schools and walking in every single morning, absolutely terrified. And the first thing you do is you listen and you learn. Don't do anything until you've actually looked at the landscape in which you're going to dip your toe. You want to learn from those that are doing it well, from those that are doing it right. You want to better understand also within your own community, your own school, all of your stakeholders, what is their level of digital literacy, right? You want to better understand where they're coming from so that you can then speak in their language in a way that they'll understand, where they can contribute to the process, so that at the end of the day, when you do decide to go into social media, you're not doing it just blindly. You're doing it with the support of your community, and you're doing it in a way that you've all agreed upon before you ever started, so that you don't get burned. And if ever something happens, the community as a whole who took this decision, right, gets to figure out how we move on. And I'll give you a few tips here. So again, you want to be able to listen, you want to be able to learn from what's already going on out there, and one of the great ways to do that, again, via social media, if you don't have anybody that you feel that you can speak with on an ongoing basis, there are great educators out there that are using things like Google Plus and sending out hints like this, right? So this is something that I found on the web just before coming here. You know, Google Plus circles teachers should know about. How many people here on Google Plus? Yeah. Okay. How many people here actually know what Google is? There you go. All right. So Google launched a social network. Of course they would. It's easy for them. It's also easy to see, once you start playing with it, why educators are really finding amazing uses in terms of speaking to each other and speaking to their students. So here are some, a very short list of some of the things that you can actually do with Google+. And I know it's a lot of writing on the screen here, so again, this presentation is going to be made available to you. I think Simon even tweeted it out yesterday. He sent out a link for those of you who are interested. So all of this information is there. I'm just going to skim through it quickly because I want to be able to take your questions too. As I said before, social media is not about one person kind of standing here with a microphone or a megaphone telling you what to do. It's about an exchange. It's about a conversation like we did with the two ladies earlier. For those of you who have questions, you have comments, please do not be shy. Come up to the mics, and I would love to hear what you have to say, any thoughts, any comments, any suggestions. We're here for that as well, and that is part of the listening process. Now, here's a guy by the name of Paul Melrose. He's Canadian, but he's also lived in Dublin. Why is he writing that? Because he's looking for other points of connection beyond the education. Talking about education all day, I don't know about you, but to me it's kind of boring. I want to talk about real people, right? And yes, I want to hear about your issues, but from time to time I want to hear about what kind of music you like. I want to hear what are some of the things that keep us connected beyond our jobs. And social media is really great for that because you get both. You get to find out what people are passionate about both in their personal and professional lives, and there's nothing wrong with that. Think about when you meet somebody at a conference and you see them again. Next time you might know their children's names, their wife names, what else they're interested in, right? These are conversations that we have over coffee, over dinner, when we meet in the hall, when we're in line to go to the ladies' room. These are things that we do. Well, this is what we also do using social media. But getting back to the core element here, education, there's a lot of sharing of resources on sites like Google+, on sites like Facebook, on sites like Twitter. But again, it's about finding those resources so that you can educate yourself and educate your stakeholders to have that common conversation to be able to co-create. Now, Paul was fantastic in finding Eileen O'Duffy. I'd never heard of Eileen, but look at Eileen. She's making a call out to all educators out there. Anybody, which could be you, who's interested in social media, who has a few tips, a few ideas. We already had 2 this morning. Why not also include them in the 24/7 tutorials? Because the more you learn and the more you share, the more you add to your social capital, you amplify your cultural capital, and people come to you as the resource as much as you go to others. That's what the co-creative process is so wonderful at doing. And again, it's less about one person taking responsibility, one school taking responsibility, and the entire community deciding this is what we're doing together. And we know that we don't have all the answers, but we want to learn. And this is it. You're educators, but you're also in the process of learning. You're lifetime learners. Or at least I hope you are. Now, this is a really, really great hashtag, and Again, for those of you who aren't familiar with Twitter, you might not know what a hashtag is. It's that number sign in front of EdChat there. And I've also got some Twitter guides on my website, and I'll give you my contact information at the end. They're free. So that for those of you who want to dive in a little bit more and find out how to use this stuff in a very concrete way, the information is there and focused. But for those of you who do understand, at the end of the day, EdChat is a way to be able to search for information that's specific to education, mostly in Canada, but it also taps upon other resources all over the world. And I think that that's important because a lot of educators that I've spoken to here are looking for Canadian examples, which is great, and I understand that. But we're somewhere else when it comes to social media. The internet, as you know, is not just limited to one country, one province, right? One person, one school. It's us as a global community. We are an interconnected community that's working together. And so you might find an amazing example in Australia that you can then start applying very specifically to your school, to your community. So you want to start looking beyond the obvious and start using your imaginations and get inspired. And there are so many ways to do that. Again, using these hashtags, you can easily and readily do searches that are specific to Ontario and to education, which brings you kind of down the rabbit hole where you to discover all kinds of new information. EdTech is actually international, but what I really love about it, again, if you look at number 3 on their top 100 list, number 3 is a Canadian example. This guy, Aaron Mueller, is in BC, and he's highlighted in this thing as being one of the front runners, as being the guy that actually really brings something to the table when it comes to using social media in education. How many people have even heard of him here? No one, right? Okay, so that's fine. You have now. And for those of you who don't remember, we're actually filming this. We're filming this session, and for those of you who don't like to be on camera, I don't blame you. Just don't pick your nose. Don't be shy. We're filming this session, and hopefully we're going to be able to put this on the internet so that more people, beyond the tweeting, beyond the Facebook, also get a chance to participate in this conversation. This conversation doesn't end when my talk ends. It doesn't end when the conference ends. It's an ongoing conversation that needs to be had, and you get to be at the front runners of that. So again, it's about encouraging users to connect directly using social media, and not just during school hours, not just when you're supposed to be working, not just when a bullying situation occurs. It's an ongoing thing. As educators, you know the issues more than anybody else in the world. So again, I encourage you to start thinking outside of, you know, those very rigid roles that we've had to assume traditionally, and start thinking in terms of what could potentially be done to touch those students, to touch those stakeholders where they live in moments when they want to talk about the things that you care about together. And that's all about strategy, right? That's all about making the decision that you're going to create a strategy together. And again, I am not suggesting that you jump in blindfolded here when it comes to social media. Look towards your stakeholders, invite them into the conversation, ask them to what extent we could potentially build some guidelines within the school that could work for the board, for the educators, for the students, for you. And the only way that you're going to do that is not by having all of these separate meetings. It's by inviting representatives of all of these different groups at the same table, in the same auditorium, or whatever your setup is, and actually having that conversation together. Because, and don't forget the kids. Invite the kids to the table. Why? Because they know more about social media than you do. They can help you create those guidelines. You can pick 3 guidelines that you think are really important, and then ask them to chime in with some other ideas that they think might be useful to better enhance their experience using social and education together. Now, this guy, Eric, is kind of the front runner, the poster child in the United States for educators and particularly principals using social media in their schools, and he uses it personally on an ongoing basis. He is one of the happiest people that I know because he's integrated his multiple personalities. There is no more separation between who he is as a person, who he is as an educator. He gets to be authentic in who he is all the time, and there is nothing that people like more than somebody who's real. So here's your opportunity to get real, just like Shannon Smith did. Now, Shannon did the same thing as Eric, except that she's in Ottawa. She's doing her thing from Ottawa, and she's inviting all kinds of people from all over the world to participate in this process of learning about education and co-creating the future of education together. So again, it's about taking cues from your user base. You've got so many educators that are already using these tools and using it in a positive way to build community. And again, Eric is not shy when it comes to Twitter. And you can see that he's really adding value to his community. Look at this. He's got 13,000 followers. He doesn't even have 13,000 people in his school. Talk about cultural capital amplified through digital technology. Amazing stuff. This guy is teaching the world how to use social media in education. But so is George Abbott. Now, George Abbott's out of Vancouver. And George is not so great at tweeting. It's not necessarily his comfort zone, but he loves taking pictures. Every time he goes to a new school, to a new board, he loves taking pictures. And he's smart enough to know that if he uploads them, A, he's going to make these people happy, but beyond that, they're going to come to his website to see the photo. And so just below the photo, someone copy and pasted this little embed this photo, which is directly under the photo, so that anybody who is in the photo, anybody who likes the photo, anybody who likes the people in the photo, anybody who cares about the topic that they're talking about can actually embed that particular photo on their blog, on their Facebook, on their Twitter, wherever it is that they want, to be able to continue that capital forward so that it doesn't just stay in his smartphone. Right? It takes exactly the same energy for me to stand here and speak to you, right? As it does for me to speak to you and be filmed, as it does for me to speak to you and be filmed and upload it live to Ustream, and it doesn't cost any more money. But all of a sudden, millions of people potentially get to be part of the conversation with the same talk, the same energy, the same basic elements, just tweaked slightly. Amplify yourselves, your voices, your opportunities through digital networking. But again, to learn how to do it, and that's all part of digital literacy. And again, you get to be at the forefront of this. You've got great examples. Look at Chris Kennedy. I like the title of his blog, The Culture of Yes. I like that. The culture of yes. Anybody who says yes when you ask them something, like right off the bat, most people want to say no. I like the idea of saying yes first. Let's see what we can do together. And so Chris is really also good at challenging people. And again, there are different techniques, there are different voices, there are different outlets. You have to find yours. Chris understood that if he challenges other educators, they're much more likely to respond. So what he did is he wrote this really, really great blog post, and he's convinced that Vancouver is the #1 province when it comes to using social media in education. Do you agree? Yes. All right. Well, so we got one yes. And then we got some people on Twitter that don't agree. Because when you put stuff out there, of course, not everybody's going to agree with you. And so here's Shannon in Ottawa. And Shannon's like, oh yeah, that's a great post. Honestly, we could stand up to each of these points. And so he did. He wrote his own blog post about how Ontario is the best province for using social media in education, and so on it goes, the ripple effect. More and more educators are jumping on the bandwagon to be able to pipe up about how great they've been able to, well, their experience, really. Their experience not only in education, but their experience as human beings that are learning this new tool to be able to do great things that we just could not do before. You realize that you're the generation that gets to change this stuff. We're always talking about the kids, and oh yeah, the kids, they live online, the kids, they live on their phones, the kids, they live in their games. You are the generation of educators that gets to harness that potential and help us build the future, not just the future of education, but the future of us as human beings. This stuff isn't going to go away. It's just not going to go away. However, I know that at least one person here is going to want to make a difference. Why do I know this? Because last year, this lovely lady, does anybody know her? Yes! All right. So I get the impression she's a lovely lady. I've never met her. She was at thumbs up, okay. She was at the TSAA conference last year. And I don't think she blogs. I don't think she tweets. I don't think she's necessarily on Facebook. I could be wrong. But what I was really impressed by is that when somebody asked her to comment about using social media vis-a-vis keeping kids safe in Toronto, in her school, oh, she was, yeah. And she was eloquent. She was a little shy, but look at that smile. I found her. I don't know her, but I found her online. There she is. Is that you? Hi. Thank you. I was looking for examples, and I found you. And that, again, is the power of social networking. I want to be able to find you. If you're doing great stuff, you got to share it, right? And we got to learn from each other. And of course, there's that fear of the negative feedback, and with good reason. With good reason. But at the same time, again, it's not going to go away. So we have to learn how to make the most of these tools and also to open up that communication. Again, it's two ways. Two ways. So again, have we received any tweets, Simon? Have you checked? We've received a couple. Are they saying anything nice? They are. Oh, this is very good. All right, so for those of you who tweeted, thank you very, very, very much. I will be retweeting you as soon as I get off this stage because I'm excited to share it with my 6,000 followers. Again, we are all the experts here. We all get to leverage each other and learn from each other. But that online critique process is difficult, and so we have to develop ways, again, as stakeholders sitting at the table, to figure out what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. If somebody does say something negative about our school, about our teachers, about a student, how are we going to deal with this? And you have to think about that before you ever get onto the social networking sites as representatives of your school. Because if you don't, if you do it after the fact, then there's a really good chance that you're only going to be reactive. And we want you to be proactive. We want you thinking about this again with your stakeholders, because if you don't, the same kind of stuff as we're seeing, you know, in Rhode Island, where a lot of schools are seriously banning Facebook, and they become jokes. They become jokes in the media. They become jokes to other schools. They become jokes to the students and to the parents, and that is not what you want. You want to give it some forethought, and you want to be able to set the ground rules as to how this stuff can be done and done in a positive light. This is your opportunity. And again, great tools out there. The Educators PLN, right, which is an Ontario-based group of educators. They're doing some really, really great stuff, great conversations, learning from each other. It's all there. It's all free. And more than happy to respond to questions, even for those of you who are just dipping in your toe. They can talk to you about best practices. Not that they have the answer, but they're beginning to see some positive results. How? Let's go find out. Let's go figure it out. So it's all about using common sense and about establishing policies well in advance so that you don't get burned after the fact. And again, a lot of principals, a lot of educators have already shared their experiences on what works best for them. Now, you can give them very specific examples so that they can start bouncing off ideas with you on what could work best for you. I love this particular Facebook page. I honestly found it just before arriving here. And it's the Principal Connection, pretty straightforward. I like the owl, you know, feels like wisdom here. What I really like is look at those thumbs up, right? 1,142 thumbs up, 1,142 people on Facebook like the Principal Connection. Why? Because they're direct, they're straightforward, and they don't just pull stuff off to pull stuff off. In fact, they are so transparent that they're telling you exactly what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. They're not just pulling stuff off randomly. They're really going at it from a strategic perspective. if you are clear with what is okay and what is not okay before ever posting, before ever opening up those floodgates, then nobody can come back and fault you. And that strategy, again, has to come from your conversation with all of your stakeholders, including the kids. Get the kids involved. They're actually the true experts when it comes to what's going to work and what's not going to work. They're going to know what it is exactly that they will abide by and what they won't abide by. So again, start with your top 3 things that you believe as schools, as community builders, are key, and then invite them to make other suggestions in terms of what should be the guidelines when it comes to social media and education, so that they then also feel like they're stakeholders, so that they also feel like they're peers, so that in fact they get to be the way that I felt when Chandra Prakash saw me at the back of that classroom. It made me realize that I had something to add, that I had a voice. You get to be those special people that change people's lives. And that's pretty amazing. Now, there are a lot of students, and I got an email yesterday from somebody that was in the group that I spoke to the day before yesterday during this conference. And they were talking about minorities and specifically, you know, very low income, and how is it that we can start using some of these social tools to specifically address young minority kids. What's really neat is that I happen to have to write a white paper for the Knight Foundation about this, so I did a lot of research around it, especially because Obama went into power, as you know, in 2008, and a lot of his platform, a lot of his success is because he learned how to use social networking to get the word out. For those of you who remember those pictures of Obama on Facebook that were floating all over the place, and again, this is not a political message, it's just about learning how to leverage the power of social media to get the word out and actually get things done. It's not just about talking, it's about getting things done with a purpose. It is clear that you all have a purpose here. And what's really fun for me when I get a chance to be a lifetime learner and do some of this research is realizing, again, that we're all different, and in particular when it comes to minorities. Thanks to Obama's win, a lot of African Americans, for example, didn't realize that they too had the power of social media at their fingertips. When Obama won, it was like this positive reinforcement. Whoa, we can make a difference. Whoa, we've got a voice. And so a lot of them started using social media using smartphones. And it wasn't necessarily their smartphone. It could be their friend's smartphone. It could be the family smartphone. Or they're living in high-rises that are, in many cases, low income, where there's one person that has the internet Wi-Fi and that you can pay $1 a month, right? So that you can share without necessarily having to have the credit to have your own account and so on and so forth. So there are a lot of different ways that low-income people are using social media that is different, but they are actually the predominant leaders in the usage of social media right now. Minorities, and specifically through the smartphone. And I found some really, really great tools specifically for educators and smartphones. And again, all of this stuff is absolutely free, because I don't think that you all should have to go out and spend to do this stuff. I think you should use the tools that the kids are already using and that you already have in your back pocket or your front pocket or your briefcase or your purse. It's there. You've got it. It's at your fingertips. Let's figure out how to use it together. And so again, very simple and smart. You want to be able to engage people using these apps. Here, in this particular app, you can instantly project student responses. You've got real-time assessment. You can allow them to do multiple choices instantaneously. You give your class, and boom, figure out, you know, what percentage actually got it. How can you educate them better? How can you keep them thinking about the class even when they've already left the school? Right? It's already on their phone. So this is really, really fun stuff. It's great engagement. It's fun for the teacher and it's fun for the students. And you also get exit tickets that kind of tell you, you know, how well you did. The kids get to give you feedback on how they felt about the class. They get to auto grade. There's also a whole variety of questions that you can program yourself or just go with the ones that are already there. It gives you reports, and it gives the kids, again, like instantaneous feedback. We all need positive reinforcement, and we all know that positive reinforcement is much stronger than negative reinforcement, so why not use these tools that are already there? And this is a really great tool that is available on Facebook. It's called Touch Graph, and I really love it because it's pretty straightforward. It essentially takes all of your friends, all of your connections on Facebook, if you allow it to, and it organizes them in a number of different ways. In this particular case, this is really by what you do within an organization, but you can also do it by geography, you can do it by connections, how many people are in a classroom that like a specific thing, how many people are using Facebook in a certain way. You can really get granular, you can put in your parameters and do searches, and again, look at the different connections between your students and your stakeholders, and really figure out how to tap in and maximize those 33 million opportunities that we were talking about before. Because as you know, right, the future of education is really about community building. That's what you do. And you do it well, and you do it better than anybody else. But the thing is that if we don't learn to do this better, stuff like traditional education is going to go by the wayside eventually, because you've got large organizations like TED. TED's got about 100 million followers online, and it's not a school, has nothing to do with school. It's those preeminent thinkers that I was telling you about before. Well, they make videos, and their videos go viral. They go viral because they're informative, they're well done, they're well produced, and they spark people to have conversations around things that they wouldn't necessarily think about, from mathematics to science to technology to culture to politics. These people tap it in, they do it in a charismatic way, and you don't even have to sit in the classroom to do it. They've got all kinds of different submissions online where anybody can tap in, start learning, add their own stuff. And this is a new model that, again, did not exist before. So we need to be able to link all of these different models and figure out what's going to work moving forward together as a community for the 21st century learner, right? That's where we're at today. And so all of these things kind of work together in tandem for these guys, right? I'm shocked when I look at this statistic. I did not make this up. This came from CNET. By age 2, 92% of US kids already have an online profile, and you know that they're not making their own online profiles, which means their parents are making their profiles, which means that they feel that these profiles need to be had. And that number is only going to go up. 92% of US kids have an online profile before they're 2 years old. Is nobody shocked at this? I mean, my goodness. What does that mean? You are born a digital dweller. Moving forward. Therefore, we need to adapt to that headspace, because a mind is a fire to be kindled and not a vessel to be filled. We need to be flexible. We need to tap into our own inner child to be able to harness the future of education together, and you are that potential. Thank you. No, stay. Okay, I stay. Did I mention I'm shy?
After having stand in front of us, that last slide actually kind of hit home. I'm thinking the 2-year-olds all have profiles, and the 50-year-olds are still in front of the TV. But I must thank Juliette for giving us some great ideas, and I find it terribly exciting, the idea of being educators at the forefront of reforming our educational system to include social media. And on that note, I just like to thank you for the fantastic presentation.